I think the media and the way it portrays British history anyway, I think that's already doing so much to make Britons hate themselves. They're teaching us about what we've done to Indians.
Hell no.
That's going to add on, that's just what it's going to add on top.
It was only a few years ago that Britain held a poll on who's the greatest Briton in history.
Well, you're going to do that in your own country,
and Winston Churchill won. That's not making them feel ashamed to be British.
He was Prime Minister at the time when we won the war. The war is celebrated as this
whilst he was mass murdering and trying to hold on to empire. That was mass murdering and so on and so forth.
I prefer Winston Churchill's early days. I prefer him in the earlier part.
When he was in Sudan murdering people.
No, when he criticised Islam, when he had even though he called it...
At that same point, he was in Africa murdering people as a part of the army.
Yeah, there was a war going on. He was a soldier.
And feeling and celebrating Britain's empire-building effort around the world.
But here, as a proud Briton, you're going to have me say, "Oh, I wish we still had an empire. I wish that we were still exploring and developing and making some bigger stuff." Because I think, in terms,
is that what you think the empire was about? Exploring and developing,
and kissing and making schools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How do you benefit from the British Empire? Because when the British Empire was created,
can I be honest?
You had a class system within Britain.
For me,
it's a good point.
For me, it's a religious.
And Britain was enslaving their own people. Did you know that?
No, for me, it's a religious.
Britain was enslaving their own people.
Yeah. For me, it's a religious thing. The spread of Christianity, I think, has done possibly one of the best things for the world. You understand? So I think when Britain goes out, and there's other people that went out and done it peacefully. Can't remember the names off the top of my head, but they've done it peacefully. British Empire went out and done it in force. But I think the spread of Christianity and moral belief and moral Christian belief, I think is the best thing. Personally, that's me personally. So
the same people that spread the Christian religion and moral belief were enslaving Africans, raping men, women and children, robbing resources. Priests blessed the ships that went to capture human beings.
They don't want it to sink, man.
Oh, indeed.
They don't want it to sink.
Indeed, to bless the ship, yes. Indeed. As long as the ship don't sink, you can kidnap the people, kill them, rape, murder, pillage, but as long as the ship don't sink.
But bro, this is a time period where people's moral compass was, we know this is right. And conservatism in Britain at that time was a different conservatism than it is today.
The moral compass of the people that would be negatively impacted by this thing knew very well that this was wrong.
I read a poll a couple of years ago, tell me if I'm wrong, and you will know, 60% of Jamaicans still wish they were under British rule. Paul. Mic drop.
Mic drop?
Mic drop.
That's not a mic drop.
60% of Jamaicans still wish they were under British rule.
You know, I have heard of this poll. I don't say I know it to be true.
No, yes.
Yeah, I have heard of this poll. I have heard of this poll.
You want to come in closer? So.
Sorry,
But that's not surprising. If it were true, it's not completely surprising.
Why's that?
Because colonization was essentially the process of teaching a people that the nation that was colonizing them was superior to them in civilization and them kind of things there. Yeah? Also, because of the fact that Britain had a vested interest in maintaining a certain living standard in Jamaica whilst it was colonizing, there were certain things that took place because they actually had like a sizable English population that they had to cater for. There were resources that Britain was giving to its colonial protectorates, that were not being given, when they were kicked out or they left, as a result. The relationship now between places like Jamaica and Britain is economic, in the sense of the fact that the economies are still controlled by the so-called Commonwealth, which is again run from this country, the UK, and institutions like the World Trade Organization, the IMF and the World Bank, who control world economy, who set the price, of banana, for example. Jamaica was known for exporting banana, but it got to a point whereby Jamaica now was not able to control the prices of its own bananas because places like America and Britain were controlling the prices.
You won't hear
so
me
mass impoverishment took place. So it presents the illusion.
But bro, that's the decisions of the top few. That's not even the decisions of
the top few. Sorry.
So when you're looking at the
Go ahead.
When you're talking about decisions that are made at the top, and there are boards and committees in which these decisions can be made in terms of the WTO and IMF and stuff like that. The thing about it is, for me, it's not Britain as a whole which I think is what's given the negative rap in terms of racism, and people should look at and stuff like that. So when we're actually looking at the decisions that were made in terms of pricing and stuff like that, we're not, it's a very select few, man. It's a select few people that.
Are you part of the British elite?
What do you mean by elite? Define elite.
The government, the decision-making aspect of Britain. But you came here celebrating British Empire, the British exploits in slavery,
adventurism and what we've done in the
all
world.
that kind of stuff, and the fact that we never had anything in Africa before the British came, and so on and so forth.
That's true, yeah.
So the point is that it doesn't take for the British decision-making bodies to reinforce this narrative and to sanction the behaviour of their elite decision-making bodies.
I wonder, what year was the IMF and the WTO?
After World War II, so we're talking about between 1945 and 1950.
You notice in your country, they don't teach you one particular important history. It happened in the 14th century, 1387.
Okay.
The Peasants' Revolt. When people in your country in the southeast,
When the white man was enslaving the white man in Britain.
and
We
they
enslaved
rebelled,
ourselves, man.
and they rebelled against the king who was a 14-year-old boy called King Richard II.
Great man, great leader. No.
And they had a document which they wanted him to co-sign and accept. And in that document was the abolishment of serfdom. Serfdom would no longer exist. But unfortunately, they failed. But they never teach that in schools. They never teach that in schools for the English. What's serfdom? Do you want to know what serfdom is?
God, please.
Serfdom goes all the way back. Sorry, I'm taking.
No. It's a conversation.
I love learning.
Goes all the way back to the time 1066 when the Normans invaded.
Okay.
They brought in their own caste system. Basically, what it meant was they owned the land and they shared the land amongst the various barons. So if you were a Saxon person, the land you lived on belonged to the Norman Duke.
Okay.
The animals on there belonged to the Norman Duke.
Yes.
When you decided to sell that stuff in the market, you had to get that Norman Duke's permission.
And that was
and
still-
he took the proceeds. If you wanted to get married, you needed to get his permission. And you didn't have the right to leave that land without his permission. So you couldn't just say, I'm going to.
You're talking about the 1400s, yeah? Now, at this point in West Africa, there were two-story buildings, yeah? You know what I'm saying?
Where?
Houses had lavatories, yeah? Yes.
bro? Where,
People were
fam?
wearing silk and leather
Fam,
in
where
West
is
Africa
this
during this
happening?
time.
Where is
Yes.
this happening?
Yes.
Where?
People were transporting, trading in gold. Yes, and salt, and diamonds and these kinds of things in West Africa during this period of time. The living standard of the average ordinary person in West Africa during that time was higher than the average person in
Where
Britain.
are you getting that information?
Read history.
No, on a genuine level.
There's a
because-
fantastic book called When We Rule by a man called Robin Walker. Break it all
I do
down.
like
for you.
books. No, I
So
genuinely-
what do you think we were doing? We were climbing up trees, eating monkey nuts or something.
But even if we
Oh, no,
were,
not monkey nuts,
the joke is,
rabbit eggs.
even if all we were doing was climbing trees, and eating fruit, the living standard of the average African was still higher than the living standard of the average Briton during that time. Even if all we were doing was wearing loincloth and grass skirts and eating fruit and chucking spears, the living standard of the average African in West Africa during that time was still higher than that of Britain.
Yeah, but you could say that about the Celts before the Romans came over. and stuff.
Very good point. Romans are brutal invaders. You know what I'm saying? It's a very good point. Very good point.